Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much to all of you for being here with us tonight. And let me thank in particular our speakers, Julián, Arlene, Rebekah. All the speakers are here tonight with us for a friendship with some of us, which I think tonight we want to share to a wide audience, and indeed, as we can see, a very large audience. Before we start to kick off the evening, let me briefly introduce them to you. So I start with Rebekah, who is a dear colleague and a dear friend. She's a lecturer in theology and the arts at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. She's an expert in particular of Victorian literature and the Pre-Raphaelite movement, but I would say more generally, she's interested in the relation between theology and aesthetics, the theory of beauty, and how this theology and aesthetics inform or have informed daily life. Our second speaker comes from Ireland, from Dublin. She's Arlene Gallagher. Arlene is a physicist at Trinity College Dublin, where she founded I discovered with pleasure some years ago, something which is called the Trinity Walton Club. And I love learning about this. It's a big project which aims to promote and innovate STEM, which essentially means scientific education, engineering, mathematics, physics. And it's a big project with more than 300,000 students involved. And finally, we have last but certainly not least, Julián Carrón, who you should know a bit. Is many different things, but tonight is in particular is the author of the book Reawakening Our Humanity, which will be at the center of our conversation tonight to a certain extent. And I say to a certain extent because our goal tonight is not really to present a book, but I will say to look at the experience that generated the book, to delve into that experience, to test it even, to challenge it with the help of the people, Arlene and Rebekah in particular, or Julián, who I think have been given to us as fellow travelers in these difficult, strange, but beautiful times. Just in a nutshell, tonight we do not want to talk about edifying ideas or thoughts or whatever. We want to leave them together with Julián, with Rebekah and Arlene. And I have to say, I'm personally very looking forward to hearing and learning from their own experience. So to have the dialogue, a couple of technical notices. We have prepared 3 questions, which we'll ask to our speakers in sequence. And I will start with the first question, and then I will ask each speaker in turn to address the question, and then we move to question number 2, question number 3, also being open to what's coming out from tonight's dialogue. So we start with the first question, and the first question has to do with what I think is the main argument of this book of Carrón, which is essentially that the whole COVID crisis in general could be an opportunity, says, of liberation, a liberation from the bubbles we normally live in, out of our normal desire to escape reality. I was reading the New York Times this morning, and there was an editorial, a title of the editorial which said, "Is the pandemic an opportunity?" Just today, I thought that was quite appropriate. So essentially, my question is the one of this editorial of the New York Times. Was this pandemic an opportunity? Not as a theoretical thing, but as an experiential thing. How have you lived these past few months? Is this an opportunity for you? What kind of opportunity? What questions have emerged? And I will ask Rebekah to start off, and then we move to Arlene and Julián. Thank you very much, Rebekah.
First of all, I would just like to thank Beppe again for the invitation to be part of this conversation, which in preparing for it has actually given me an opportunity to really delve deeper and self-examine in a variety of ways. And in doing that, I also must thank Father Carrón, because reading your book really helped give me a vocabulary in many instances to think more deeply about my own lived experience. And parts of it were a real challenge to me in a very fruitful way. So I must thank you, and I just wanted to say it's such a privilege to be on this, to be part of this conversation with you and Arlene as well. Well, I'd have to say that almost every day or every week brought new revelations to me about myself in particular, and about different things that I'm used to. For instance, missing my favorite coffee on my way to work and things like that. All sorts of little things that you often look forward to in your day are suddenly removed from you. I think it might be helpful to share a little bit first about what my particular situation is, because for me, in some senses, I felt like I all of a sudden had this wide expanse of time available to me. And I know that is not the case for many of you, especially if you're blessed to have children or a family. Many of you also might have other care responsibilities and so forth. So as Beppe said, I am an academic. I am a lecturer here at the University of St. Andrews. And it's very fortunate that my university was one of the institutions that plowed through during the pandemic and very successfully actually put all of the teaching online. While that was a challenge, and I am definitely more than zoomed out, I was very grateful that I had the opportunity to work. But because I don't have children, I also, I think, was given the opportunity to really experience time in a different way. I all of a sudden had a lot of it available to me. That was a blessing, and that was also quite difficult at times, especially experiencing a certain kind of isolation, being very separated from my family, most of whom are in Canada, and I was planning to spend time with them this summer, and that was taken away from me. Many of my dear friends, my boyfriend, all very far away from me at this time, and that has been very difficult. And it's really helped me to think about the value and the gift of being together in person. There's nothing that can really replace it, actually. So that has been something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. And while ultimately I'd say I've really come to appreciate it as a gift, I've also had to move through various stages of acceptance, I think, right? And what I found really helpful, if I may turn to Father Carrón's book for a moment, is that he talks quite a bit about the way in which our freedom often lies in receptivity, in receiving what is given to us. Very often we actually don't call the shots, right? To a wide extent, given our particular circumstances and our different commitments and how they've been affected by the government mandates at certain times, and then just also personal circumstances. So missing human connection has been something that's been very difficult, but also something that in a sense has been reaffirmed through its absence. And close to lockdown, when lockdown was about to be imposed in the UK, I was very blessed to have a sister who was able to dash up from London and stay with me. And that actually has also been such a gift as well, because we haven't lived near each other for quite a few years. I come from a big family. I have 5 siblings, and it's a lot of work to keep up with each other. And so it's been wonderful to all of a sudden be with her in this way and kind of rediscover each other in close quarters. Anyway, she's very patient. Anyway, it's been wonderful. But to go more specifically into the heart of Beppe's question, yes, I do think that this has been a time of opportunity for us, especially if I think people from across very different walks of life, across the political spectrum. I've read all sorts of different editorials and comment pieces saying generally that there is an opportunity within COVID. However, I would like to especially emphasize how much a Christian understanding of time and everyday life has really helped me to see that COVID era, as it were, can be a time to really reconnect with our Lord in the present moment. I've been greatly consoled by especially the spirituality of Saint Therese of Lisieux, who Father Carrón also mentions in his book, particularly towards the close of his book, who really emphasized that the present moment is a gift, and indeed is a form of sacramental, really. It can be a conduit of grace, and that the present moment is really where our freedom lies. The past is done, and the future is something we do not know. And that our peace actually can only come in the present moment. So that's one of the key things that the COVID era has really impressed on me, and it's been a lifeline. Though you have to renew dedication to the present moment in each moment, really. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much, Rebekah. I will ask Arlene to take the floor. Thanks, Arlene.
Microphone, please.
Excuse me. My apologies, everybody. Once again, just to echo what Rebekah has said in her thanks, it's a real honor to be here tonight. And like Rebekah, it was a real opportunity to focus my thoughts and be provoked by Father Carrón's book, which I'm using at the moment as an instrument to guide me on this journey of discovery, which is, I hope, forever, and will continue. But certainly over the last few months, I guess in some sense I might share with you all, and I might just disclose this at the beginning, COVID as an experience kind of didn't really greatly impact. I didn't lose anybody as a result of COVID. And to think of people who have lost loved ones and couldn't be with them, that is something that I'm very conscious of, that as an experience, COVID did not have that impact on me. However, a few months before COVID, I had the greatest crisis in my life where I lost my son. So he was only 3 days old, a perfect little boy, Rian. And really, I think what COVID did for me was provide some space and some pause, because while it was still very raw in March when the lockdown in Ireland started to take place, really I was forced to not, I had a period of survival. I had to just eat and get on with my day. But then I moved into a stage of running from myself, running from my thoughts, not looking at my reality in the eye. And for me, what COVID presented, honestly, was a beautiful space for me and my husband Dan, to really look at our reality and to look inward. And we have gone on separate journeys, and we have come back together, and we have shared what we found ourselves. But it's a very personal journey to examine such a crisis in your own life. And I think that space was just so valuable and so necessary. And firstly, to have the awareness that I wasn't looking at my reality. That was the first thing I got from COVID and finding that time. And then I realized I was doing a great disservice to myself and my son by not taking the time to look inward and to look at this circumstance for all that it could be. And really, as it's in the book, as an opportunity to deepen my Christian experience. So I have been using the book, and I have been moving through COVID with my wonderful friends at the School of Community group. And we have been provoked weekly to ask questions, and I have also, taken the time to reflect myself. And one thing I can say is that from having such a great crisis in my life, I don't want to be as defenseless the next time. And I believe that it is through my own, active work that looking at the fullness of every circumstance as best as I can, because it's exhausting. It's really challenging to live in that intense moment of every experience. But certainly something as big as losing your son warrants the respect of taking time and really looking at that as an event that will shape you forever. So it's not that I ever anticipate that I will ever accept the losing of Rian, but I can certainly look at the experience as the legacy of my son and all that he's brought to our life. And perhaps even go as far to say is that, he's more alive in that sense than even if he was here. So I've had time to, because of COVID, to really come to terms with this event. And I have asked many questions, why, and why me, and why my husband, who is the most wonderful person. And it was just that space that COVID provided, where I will go on this journey. I'm not finished. I have a long, long way to go. But, there was a beautiful saying as Father Carrón, to quote Father Carrón, circumstances are given to help to become more attracted to the one who calls us in a mysterious way. And this has been the greatest mystery of my life. We have no answers per se, and but it's our response to that. It's the testing of us and how we look at that, and it's an opportunity to test our faith in that journey. So for me, while COVID directly has, you know, lots of little things, and like Rebekah, I miss my coffee too, but on a more, you know, deeper existence of, you know, what is the meaning of my life? Why am I here? What am I doing? What's it all about? I am okay with just looking at circumstances and really trying to take the most possible. And it's hard work. It can be very uncomfortable. And I have begun to sit with myself and my thoughts again. I avoided that for a long time, but it's a journey that I hope to continue to keep going on. So I couldn't run from it during COVID. I had nowhere to go. I had to stay inside. And while it's an incredible global challenge, and we have many more consequences that we haven't even felt yet of COVID, I'm seeing it as a gift in my life, as something that gave me space and time to really actually look inward. So that's my experience and what I have learned through COVID.
Thank you very much, Arlene. I will leave the floor to Julián now. Same question to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I am very grateful to Arlene and Rebekah for his willingness to be with us this evening in this dialogue, because it's always a pleasure that we can be together facing the most human questions that we are in our life. This occasion is an opportunity to recognize what we share with each other, because we were challenged as human beings like many other people around the world. And I was challenged, like everyone else, by the virus, by the lockdown, by the isolation at home, by the sense of vulnerability, by the suffering of people, by deaths of many around me. All this challenge was awakened questions in me as and everybody else. In front of these provocations, the first things that I had to decide is whether or not to face them, because we can escape for this question. We can try to be distracted with another kind of things, or we decided, I decided to look at them as a human being. So for me, I share in the book, it was a provocation, an opportunity to stop and think. No, I decided not to waste my time and accepted the challenge and grasped the opportunity to think. The fruit of the reflection is this book, no? That I decided posted by a person who worked in a editorial group to make available to everybody this kind of reflections that everybody can find in the book. I was forced, like everybody else, to face the questions contained in this book, because are the same question in whatever way we can describe the question that we share. Why, Arlene said before, why me, why in this occasion, as Rebekah said. So, but each one of us need to look back, after the health emergency, to answer to the question you are putting before us. What have you learned? No? And I think what we have learned, we can recognize in the way we are facing the return of our daily activities. The test is not only when we were facing the question, but what is the outcome of this journey, a human journey? We can recognize if we grew in our humanity when we need to return to the reality. And this is an occasion for me, because as a believer, for me, these particular circumstances are being the opportunity to verify my faith, to verify at the end my relationship with Christ, because when we are challenging by this kind of questions that are so human, so profound, so deep, it's the faith that is at stake. It can resist in front of these questions. Can I dealing with this isolation, with this loneliness, with this fear, with the death, with the suffering? And for me, it was an opportunity to recognize what is the companionship that Christ is for life when I am challenged, because it's in that moment I can recognize who he is. And I was struck by a psalm, because we have seen in this in the way in which we were challenged by this particular virus, because it was not possible to enter in the relationship with the other. We need to be isolated. That there is somebody in which we believe that in that particular moment said that they was taking care of us. Is in this occasion in which the sentence of the psalm, what is man that you are mindful of him? A mortal man that you care for him. It's like an opportunity to be aware of the force of faith. I am astonished of living this with this awareness, because it's like an opportunity in which I can see, I can touch the presence of God at work in life, not only as a pious moment, but a real presence that allow me to enter in the relationship with everybody and every question without being afraid of the risk, of the question, of the darkness, of the death, and it's like a moment in which we can realize what is the consistency of faith. That faith is not only an illusion, is not at all a thought, but is a reality that is more consistent than every attempt of a virus, because only this present is able to be in front of every virus and every challenge in life.
Thank you very much, Julián. Actually, my second question will develop from what's been emerging in the previous conversation. And I was struck when Arlene was saying that the experience of the COVID didn't let any place to go. There was nowhere to go, which in a way introduced then what Julián was talking about. I mean, the decision to face the circumstances. Paradoxically, with fewer distractions, it's easier to accept, easier, not automatic, but easier. And this could both, as Rebekah was saying, the discovery of a presence within an absence, even as a starting point, but then the discovery, as Julián has just been saying now, of a presence with a face who is taking care of us in every single moment. So all this has been emerging in a situation like the one we have lived. Now, as Julián was saying, we are reopening different stages, but Europe is reopening again. And I think that many of the things that we are seeing now, like the Black Lives Matter and so on, a lot of things that happen in the world are in a way also kind of consequent to these questions and desire which are being awakened in a confused way, if you want. So the second question that I have is, what can sustain this reawakening? Because now that we are reopening everything, now that we're getting back to normal and we see it already, my own desire within myself to go and look for distraction whatsoever. What do we need another crisis? What can sustain the daily life in these different moments and even stabilize, I will say, to make it stable, not to go crazy? These questions that have been emerging, this humanity which is being reawakened. So that's the second question. How can we sustain this? And I will start again in the same order, asking the question to Rebekah first, and then Arlene, and then Julián. Again, it's not a theoretical question, so we're not interested in your vision of life, but what do you see in yourself as useful to sustain this, first of all?
A very good question, and I've been asking myself that as I wait for the various sub-phases within the phases of Scotland's way of dealing with slowly letting us back out into everyday life. That's a very good question. I was very struck by a variety of things, again, that Father Carrón said that I think will help me explain how I've been trying to approach this question. That there's such a task and challenge and call to sit with yourself, just even in a room, right? To be with yourself. And I think actually a big part of returning to the world in a way that is fruitful and that allows us to live out some of the lessons that we have been learned, or in a way that have been, in some senses, I've felt sometimes these lessons have been forced upon me to a degree, and I've had to sit back and think about them and reflect on them. I think it's very important to try to cultivate one's interior life. Again, I'll go to St. Therese for a moment. She is the patron of missionary life, right? And she lived in a secluded Carmelite monastery, and yet her heart longed to go out to the world. And I think actually having some time to be withdrawn, even though it's been incredibly difficult, and I also haven't lost anyone during COVID, and in saying that, I know I'm among the many, I mean, the privileged few. There are many who have suffered so much, but this time has really forced and invited me to sit with myself, and sometimes that has been incredibly hard. One thing that I've really learned, though, is I've learned a lot about myself and what constitutes a healthy daily routine for me versus one that isn't a good one for me, and so on. And I often take on way too much, and I get burnt out and exhausted, and so on. And I've been thinking that there's been a lot made available to me during this time to really think more carefully and discern and even pray about what should my week look like, or who should be the people I give my time to this week, and so on. And I think if we can try to carry some of that more purposeful, quiet, intentional way with us, especially as lockdown eases, that could bring a great peace of mind, but it also could help us more intentionally respond to those people around us, and also allow ourselves time and to give ourselves pause before, say, we make up our mind about different difficult, complex, and pressing social questions. One thing that I find about the nature of even social media, as much as it has many wonderful uses and it enables us to have this conversation we're having right now together, is that it can very often demand an instant response. Everything is always a like or a dislike, a tweet or a retweet right away. And I think that having a more paused, measured, and reflective response, even to the news that we receive, will also help us not only live a more peaceful daily life, but also approach some of the big questions that like the ones you brought up, Beppe, just now as examples. I think that will be helpful. I think we will lose much of the lessons learned if we try to go back to living exactly as we did before. And as Arlene mentioned, there will be many effects of COVID that we haven't yet seen or faced, economically, psychologically, socially, and so forth, that require us to be more contemplative if we're going to be able to face it, right? And so I hope it's not that we need necessarily another crisis, even though there are ways in which suffering and crises kind of blow the heart open, as it were, right? Because there's really nowhere to hide. But what I hope is that the crisis we're living right now and that we're going through has raised a variety of questions for us. And I think a lot of these questions have centered around who am I? What is my life about? What kind of use of my time should I make? And so forth. So I think if we can keep those questions and keep something of a bit of a quieter tempo, I think it could really help us. So that's what I'd like to offer as a response.
Thank you very much, Rebekah. Arlene, up to you.
I mean, I would wholeheartedly agree with Rebekah and a lot of what she said there about, I feel the same. I've been using my time irresponsibly. I have been throwing it around, engaging in lots of different things that are not feeding me in the way that I want to be fed. And I have, I guess, as in the initial instant is to make that promise to myself to work at it. And, you know, that is not something that is, it doesn't necessarily create results, but I do believe that moving in the direction of something is part of achieving, and gravitating towards what you desire is a vital part of going and achieving. And for me, using my time more efficiently or perhaps just carefully and spending time to work on myself and to reflect and I have a beautiful diary that I have created. I'm trying to spend some moments, quiet reflection and using my school of community group to really think about things. And that, you know, I think the constant reminder, and unfortunately, I do believe we need to be part of, you know, an active group that will actually help to remind us to actually keep working on it. It's not something instinctive. I don't think I naturally want to dig in and work hard on myself. I will in some ways, but in this respect, I find it, I'm afraid. I have fear as well of perhaps what I might have to see or what I might actually need to do, to the work that needs to be done. And I think, but the victory over the realities for me and about sustaining that is just trying to say that you are not perfect, and to accept that, and to know that you will fail. And again, that sense of it's not a liberation, and it's not a get out of jail card, but it's part of the process. And to, for me, to accept that reality is something that is ever changing, and you have to keep changing with it. It's you know, and I really like this expression, the dizzying experience. I think it captures quite well the sense of trying to live so intensely in the moment, and to take the fullness of that reality that you're presented with. It's exhausting, it's tiring, but like I said, I think moving towards it and trying and being on a journey with it is enough. Certainly for me at the minute, I have quite a long way to go. And in terms of sustaining this rediscovery of the victory of what's in front of us, the reality, I think, you know, and to quote Father Carrón as well from the book, the greatest contribution we can give to the world is to say yes to the call of the mystery. So, you know, having the desire in the first instance to want to live reality for all that's in it and all that it represents is the way to potentially move towards rediscovery. And I think, you know, when you do say that yes, which I am wholeheartedly trying to embrace, and I am putting my hands up. While I am saying yes, I desire to embrace reality. In some instances, I feel that it's changing how I am, and in others, not so much. And in some ways, you know, the serenity is momentarily experienced and appreciated, and I am happy, and then I am deflated because I am failing. And I go through this cycle of pick myself up, you know, through my companionship as well. And I have some wonderful friends who really feed my soul, and you know, they are provoking me to think about things. And I think it's about, as you said, Rebekah, as well, who feeds, surround yourself with people who are feeding this for you, and recognizing perhaps who isn't, and to use your time to actually more carefully to be with those people. And I think as we move through life, that's all we can really do. And I have a sense that while crisis does provoke us to look at reality, well, perhaps it's not enough though. The crisis itself is not enough. We have to have the internal desire to actually want to see it for what it is, and not let it actually just be another event in our life, or a shallow experience, but to actually have the desire to want to unpack it and to expose the content. And in this moment in time, I am saying yes, I have a whole heart wanting this, to look at reality. Am I confident that will always be there? I can only hope. I have hope, and I can pray, and I can work with my friends on this topic, but it's a journey, it's a process. And I think there is no real ultimate destination. I think the journey, the process, is where the richness is. That actual moving through seeing reality and failing, as I said, or not seeing it and picking yourself up and coming back to it again, I think that's enough. For me, for now, that's enough in itself.
Thank you very much, Arlene. Same question to Julián. What can sustain the reawakening of the things we've been talking about?
I am really surprised, but by the fact that so many people put their questions in the public domain, no? In the newspaper, in the television show, no? Even people who are not used to this kind of came out, I don't know, of coming out from his or their own insight in front of everybody, you know, because people who are unbelievers, who don't have any question in the normal life, in the way they are living in the reality, in front of this challenge, everybody was pushed to come out, no? And this is really a surprise, because question that in many occasions are cancelled from the public domain, in a moment, in front of this challenge, all these questions comes out, no? And it was a festival of the humanity, no? Because this kind of questions that are always silent in the society, because whatever other things have the priority to the human questions, in a moment, these human questions occupy the attention of people that is not usual to this question. And that is the meaning of reality. So the reality has this capacity of reawakening or reawakening the human being, at least in a moment, at least in front of the challenge, at least in some particular circumstances in life, that there is a room for hope, because we are not so destroyed that there is no event that can provoke at that level of life. And this for me is an occasion, but at the same time, we can see, returning to the daily life, we can see many times that this provocation is not so deep that can last in front of the new activities of the daily life. No, for the reason you are very smart, putting this question to our dialogue. No, what can sustain this rediscovery or this reopening of the human heart? Because this is the real question. I am always remembering dialogue with one of my students that he told me after a lesson that he had a car accident some times ago and remained in coma for a period of time. And when he reawakened, everything was a surprise. The reality spoke to him with a force, with that energy, with that newness, that it was a surprise for him. Everything was given, everything was received like something new, with a freshness, with a intensity, that he was really surprised. But after the lesson, he told me that listening what we were talking about the relationship with the reality, he realized that little by little, this newness was diminished little by little. No? And from that moment, I have like this question: how something so significant for a person can be so deep, but at the same time that is not able to last. After a while, is almost forgot. And this is the question that we are facing now. After finishing more or less almost the health emergency, we have in front of this question. For this is what can resist the time? What is the resist the habits that we are the activities that can again absorb ourselves and forget what we were living with this intensity in the past month. My answer to this question, what can sustain this rediscovery, is only a companionship. For us, Christian companionship, but with an observation. It's not whatever kind of companionship, because we can see we has been reawakened from a bubble, because we are together, we are living together, but there is some kind of living companionship as a bubble that is against human being, no? And because we can see in the education, we can see in the family, like the goal of the family was to spare children from facing reality, no? To prevent them from the risk, to try to spare all the difficulties. What is the opportunity? What all these circumstances are the opportunity of growing, no? So what we can, what we need is a kind of companionship which introduces us to the whole of reality, not only some kind of bubble in which we are well together, but at the same time we can diminish within each other this kind of provocation of the reality. So a kind of human companionship or friendship which helps us to live reality intensively. This is, I think, what we need. And what does it mean to live reality intensely? Is to live reality not remaining in the surface of the reality, but living reality so intensively that we reach the meaning of every circumstance we are trying to live. In our personal experience, we can find the signs of both of them. When we live in a bubble, or when we live in a companionship that is able to introduce us, to accompany us to the meaning of life. And what is the test? That we are in a bubble or we are in a real companionship. The test is the result of this kind of companionship. We either suffocate or can breathe. If we can feel, we live in the reality, only suffocating in every circumstance because we are unable to deal with this particular circumstance, or we are not able to cope with the difficulty, or even in that particular circumstance, this particular difficulty, we can breathe. We can live like with a meaning that whatever circumstance can be for us, can be a possibility of living, not only of put up with, no, only to bear these circumstances, but to have the possibility of enjoying these circumstances. And this is, there is no possibility of error. Our experience shows us whether we are living reality with meaning or not. If we can enjoy what we are doing, even if it is challenging or hard to live. And in that test, we can recognize if we are fine, have found the answer to the question you are putting on us. No, because we recognize that we have found what can endure after this particular challenging moment, or we are again in the bubble after a while, as we were before.
Thank you very much, Julián. So I have a third question. I will now ask the third question, but since it's getting late, so I will invite all the three of you to be shorter. But the third question stems from two things that have come out in what you've been saying now, which struck me, because on the one hand, all the three of you have talked a lot about the discovery of myself. You put a lot of emphasis on the I, myself. And yet, then you brought also in the idea of a companionship. And sometimes there's a kind of opposition between the two, which is certainly not a Christian thing. And the question that I have, which I think is what holds the two things together, is what is beyond, what is behind, what is within both things, within the particular circus, the I, and within the true Christian companionship. And to talk about this, I will quote very briefly a thought of Giuseppe that Carrón, Julián recently quoted for a message for an Italian pilgrimage, and really struck me the fact that he quoted it there. And Giuseppe says that for one's whole life, the true moral law, we'll be talking about that, what we're supposed to do, where true moral law will be that awaiting for the nod of this Lord, attentive to the signs of a will of someone else that would appear to us through immediate circumstances. So this quote brings in, if you want, a third person, a third character between the I and the companionship, the infinite, the mystery, the Lord. So the final question is very simple, is what has been your own relationship with the Lord, in yourself, with the help of the companionship, but how in particular your own relationship with the mystery has grown, has developed? What have you learned in this respect in particular? So same order, Rebekah first, Arlene and Julián, and then we close.
That's a very deep and rich question. I will try to approach it in just a few minutes. So I've always been grateful for the kind of faith my parents imparted to me, which has actually come to my aid quite a bit during this time in COVID. My parents were converts and to Catholicism, and my father passed away when I was quite young, and seeing the way in which my parents embraced his suffering as he went through terminal cancer really has always been this kind of reference point that I go back to, because even though it was a very painful time, I have very clear recollection of my father sharing with me that this cancer he had was making him a better father for me and for my siblings. And so in different periods of crisis in my life or difficulty, and I have to say, particularly in this period, when I've thought about the suffering of various people during this time, or especially the question of suffering, I've often gone back to that that school of faith and relationship with Christ that my parents have really modeled to me in a very special way. And I've found it so helpful because I've seen in so many ways that this difficult time, especially the kind of the isolation that it's particularly brought to my circumstances in particular, has been an opportunity to make me a better daughter of God, or a better friend, and a better friend with Christ in particular. And so I'd especially have to say that this period has invited me to really try to model what my parents did. I've been thinking about them a lot during this period, I have to say, and to really try to lean into the difficulties and see that Christ is there. Christ is in those difficulties. And that's what it means to live out the belief in the doctrine of the incarnation, right? The points of our faith, Christian doctrine, they're not just concepts, right, that are given to us and perfect formulas that are going to, that we abide by and assent to. No, we have to make them, what Newman would say, real to us, right? So they have to move from notional concepts, these are the assents of faith that we have, to a real lived reality. And so it's particularly Christ's incarnation, his generous condescension to enter into history, to enter into our daily lives. He spent 30 out of 33 years doing hidden ministry to transform history, right? I've been thinking a lot about the hidden Christ, but also the Christ who accompanies us in sorrow and sadness. And so I'd have to say that during this time, when there have been so many anxieties and just a lot of uncertainties in various aspects of my personal life, even wondering what the outcome of my work life will be and everything, I've been thinking so much about how Christ is present. And so I've been having a lot more short little conversations with him and have been praying Lectio Divina a lot more. And that has helped me a great deal, because entering into the word of Christ is entering into, as Father Carrón says so beautifully in his book, entering into resurrection, because every word of Christ is the seed of resurrection and new life. And during this difficult time, I just have grown to a whole new appreciation of the way I've seen relationship with Christ modeled in my own family from my childhood. And it's been a lifeline for me during this time, I have to say.
Wonderful, thank you, Rebekah. Arlene, same question.
For me, I guess the seeing this presence in life and in others, seeing these through their actions, but also through their desires and how they are perhaps wanting to be better. And I think I see the mystery I feel I see it in others, and how they perhaps are trying to be better and to be a better Christian. Something else that I realized through my own crisis was that to see the presence is very it's a type of, to ask the Holy Spirit to come and to see it in all of the acts of everything around you, and because it is the act of doing good things, and what kind of provokes us maybe to do good things, or to see the act of good, I think. And I constantly am becoming more aware, for me, when I see our frontline workers, and my own mother is involved in this community, I just see their selflessness, and and so many people, the people in our shops, everybody that have been putting themselves out there. I feel the presence of Christ in this. Another thing, though, that I discovered is that while many people are experiencing perhaps the same crisis, so in my case, the losing of Rian, it is not something that I can explain to anybody, my relationship with the mystery. It is something that is very personal, and each of us have our own relationship with that mystery. And for me, that was something that was new. I thought I was perhaps maybe I could learn this, or I could perhaps hear how other people are doing it, and it would help me, or I could have what they have. But it has become more apparent, this, living at the will of the infinite, that it is a very personal relationship. It's not something that, as I said, is replicated with any person and the mystery.
Bellissima.
It's something that is quite unique to you, and that's incredible, and also something that each of us have to work at. It's not something we're handed, it's something that we have to work at. And I think where I've taken some in reading, like Rebekah, actually, I have been reading the Bible more and listening and reading the words with a different intensity and a different desire to really see things better and to be better. And I have really come to terms, and it was actually a conversation with Father Carrón in January, I think it was, where I recognized that Christ became man so that he suffered alongside us. He wasn't going to take this suffering away, and for us to realize that there's hardship is part of living, but it's also the opportunity to connect with your faith and to connect with Christ. And for me, developing that personal relationship with the mystery has been just such a wonderful outcome over this time. And finally, then, just to note that, and again, I think this is a quote from the book, I just have it noted here, to embrace every moment as an opportunity to become more attentive to God's call, whether it be through acts of others, whether it be through situations, whether it be through crises. I am trying to be more attentive, and to see it more, and to I ask the Holy Spirit to come every day, and I am so grateful for I thank God for certain things every day. And I think just acknowledging the higher purpose, or the sense that this is for each of us. It's not something that is going to just ultimately fix everything for us, but it's a way for us to live our lives in a fuller way, if we acknowledge that there's something more divine, that there is something more divine presence, and to try to see that in everything as best we can. It's not easy, and I fail regularly, and once again you become deflated and you work at it. And but certainly I just want to share that it's been a very personal relationship with the mystery for me. It hasn't been something that I've seen perhaps in others, and I can maybe explain it, but they don't understand my way of my relationship with the mystery. So it's for each of us to find.
Thanks, Arlene. Very clear, very useful. Julián, it's up to you to conclude the evening, address the same question.
Circumstances can be perceived as an obstacle to overcome, as a damnation, which we had to bear, or a call to better understand life, myself, others, and the mystery. And this is the alternative. This is not only, first of all, an alternative that is good or that is bad. Is if the circumstances can be approached like something to know or something to bear, no? That means that if circumstances, a reality as a whole, is a question of knowledge, first of all, it's not a question of a moralistic approach, in the sense that how brave I am, I have to be to cope with these difficulties. And this is for me the contribution that the Giuseppe offers to everybody, to understand circumstances, this little thing, this challenging thing, this moving thing that we cannot grasp in many occasions because they are always unpredictable, no? Leaving these circumstances as a call from another, as a call from the mystery. So if we follow the provocation of reality without stopping short, following the exigence of our reason that was provoked by the reality until the end, without stopping until the end, we can encounter the origin of this reality, the mystery. Because the best of the reality is not what is the surface. The best is at the end, is along the way, is the discovering of the presence of somebody. We can recognize, we have found this mystery along the way in the reaction we can surprise in ourselves, an experience of liberation. As if we were in the middle of nowhere and encounter somebody. What would be the first reaction in front of a person after weeks being alone in the middle of nowhere? The first reaction was joy, liberation, breathe, because that the reality can be inhabited by somebody is the best thing that we can, the best news that we can receive. Otherwise, we have to leave the circumstances as something to bear, to put up with in a moralistic way. If I am so brave to bear this, no? Not something that I can discover inside, not near, inside, in the deepest part of the reality. Only if we can live reality intensively as a human being, according to the nature of reason, of freedom, of affection, that we are looking for something that can be the meaning of our life. For me, this period was an opportunity to intensify this relationship with the mystery, with Christ, because in this moment in which I discovered in this moment in which I can be challenged in such a way, is the moment in which I discovered the difference between any other presence and his presence. I discovered who are really friends for my life, who is my true companionship that can accompany me to this mystery, to the meaning of life, to fulfillment. And when I can find person around me that at the end is a distraction from this journey, from this adventure to discover that is the deepest part of the reality. When I cannot bear myself, many times happen, no? That I cannot put with myself, I perceive this suffering, this kind of suffocation. But at the same time, it's impossible for me now that I can perceive this suffocation without feel this like a call from him. Like if he, in the middle of this suffocation, would ask me, don't you miss me? With a capital me. Don't you miss me in this kind of loneliness? Don't you miss me in your sadness? In your you don't have nostalgia on myself, on my, because this is the best of the circumstances, the best of the reality. It's like when you receive, both of you receive a flower, that is somebody behind the flower. The flower is only the appearance that we can enjoy it with by the beauty of the flower, but the flower at the end comes down and was destroyed, and now is unable to grasp our life. The best of the flower is always behind, is the person who sent us the flower. Reality is the sign of somebody who loves us in such a way that we can only decide to discover, to meet again and again through, not only against the circumstances, through the circumstances, through every challenge, through every provocation, through, because it's the way in which the mystery is calling us. It's calling us to a relationship. Like the flower is a possibility of sending to another one how important is your life, your person for him or for her. Everything becomes full of meaning. It's not only something to bear, something to put with, no? It's something to enjoy, because it's always the possibility of receiving the visit of the beloved. So in such a way, life becomes another thing, like a possibility. And even though we come to face particular suffering circumstances, like Arlene said before, no? Because I can't forget what St. Paul said. We know that St. Paul suffered many of the difficulties that we can not even imagine, no? When he tells us in his letter all the hardship, the difficulty, the persecution that he had to bear. But is through this thing that St. Paul got a certainty about his presence that we cannot imagine. What will separate us from the love of Christ? Will anguish or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? No. In all these things, we conquer overwhelming through him who loves us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angel, nor principalities, or nor present things, nor future, nor powers will be able to separate us from the love of Christ Jesus. Who would not want to have this certainty? But this certainty is gained by Paul, not only thinking, not only in moment of peace. When he was challenged again and again for the hardship, for the persecution, for the difficulties, from the assault along the Roman Empire street and ways, the highways of that moment. But in that moment, in which St. Paul was rediscovering what is the consistency of life, that is not some particular explanation, but a person that become more and more the life, his life. No, I cannot live without the memory of this. I cannot live my life in every circumstance without being in touch, in relationship with him. And life is another thing. And this is, I think, the contribution that we can offer, others that don't have received, that didn't have received the gift of faith, no? Because when you can see people that couldn't accompany their parents to the cemetery, no, or are afraid in front of the impossibility to visit them when they were in the COVID hospital, no, we can be sure that they are not alone, even in this particular moment, even when they cannot accompany them, because there is somebody, no, that accompanied him. I can imagine that St. Paul, who has this certainty, that had seen Christ risen, cannot be preoccupied by the fact that he cannot accompany his parent to the cemetery, because what is important is not the way in which this happened. The real issue is that Christ is risen. And this is the hope for every people in the world. And we can testify this in the daily life if we are growing in this certainty along the way, through all the particular challenges that we have to face.
Thank you very much. And I think there is nothing to add, and I think we can conclude with this note of hope. And thank you to all the speakers, thanks to Arlene, thanks to Rebekah, thanks to Julián, and thanks to all the people who have been with us tonight. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.